Hello, my name is Daniela Camacho, and for my cultural movie review, I did it over the movie Hotel Rwanda. I chose Hotel Rwanda because I find it very interesting how a lot of nations dealt with the repercussions of colonialism. To start off, I did my cultural profile on Rwanda, and I found some very interesting numbers and a little bit surprising. But overall, I think the movie did a really great job at showcasing those cultural numbers. To start off with the Hofstede, Rwanda doesn't have numbers, but East African nations like Kenya and Tanzania do, and the cultures are very similar. But power distance is one of the highest scores up there, at a score of 70, and I think that was very prominent in the movie. You could see the difference and how important it was to have a title such as the general, or George, the supplier. They would get gifted fancy gifts by Paul, either fancy scotch or expensive cigars, and like Paul would say, you have to do it with style because you have to respect them since they are higher up and you never know when you need a favor from them. On the other hand, though, individualism scored very low at a score of 25, but I think that was still very well shown in the movie. Although at the beginning of the movie, I thought the characters were showing more like individualistic traits, especially Paul. He seemed to only care for himself and for his family, and same thing the generals and the colonel only seemed to care about themselves. However, as the movie progressed, you could see how important collectivism was for the country, and how the refugees and the Tutsi people that ran to the hotel to survive, they had to stick together as a group because they knew that was the only way they were going to be able to survive, as opposed to only thinking about themselves. And I know that's something Paul grew upon. Towards the beginning, you could see he was a little hesitant about helping his neighbors, but at the end he didn't even want to leave them behind because he knew it was important for him to stay. On the other hand, with the globe cultural dimensions, something I found very interesting and kind of goes hand in hand with the Hofstede is that in-group collectivism dimension, and I think that was very, very clear in the movie. The Hutu people, once you were in the group, you were in the group, and your loyalty belonged to the group, and everybody outside of the group was seen as the enemy or the competition, and in order for the Hutu to survive, they had to kill the Tutsi people off, and you could see that battle. And same thing with the Tutsi people. They stayed with their own people because they knew that if they went outside of their group of people, they would be killed. And I think that in-group collectivism, their score was 5.84 on practical and 5.77 on value, but I think it was very well portrayed in the movie. And another thing, gender egalitarianism scored very low on the globe dimension at a 2.86, but I think the movie reflected that very well too. Towards the beginning of the movie, when Tatiana asked for Paul to think about helping his neighbors, Paul just kind of was like, hey, let me do the deciding and trust with my gut because I am the male in this relationship and I know what's best. Same thing towards the middle of the movie when the cockroaches, as the Hutu people referred to the Tutsi women, they were held in cages and they were looked down and they were made to do inhumane acts and they were treated as less than human. And then to move on to Trompeneur's cultural dimensions, there's one specific one I want to talk about, the specific versus diffuse. I think the character of George demonstrated that very well. He was very prominent about mixing his professional life with his personal life. He even told Paul, hey, if you want to survive and you want to do good, you need to go out there and hang out with the politicians and the generals to do good. So I think he showed that cultural side of the country, because even Paul, he had to bribe a lot of the militia people for the survival of himself and the Tutsi refugees, as well as the neutral versus emotional. I think you could see that very well with Tatiana. She shows that because they're such a collective society, they have to act on their emotions, and it's more circumstantial, hey, they did this, and they care more as opposed to being more neutral and just deciding on facts. So in conclusion, I think Hotel Rwanda did a really great job at showcasing the different cultural dimensions, and I wasn't very surprised by anything, simply because I did do a lot of research before the movie, and I think the only opinion that I was proved wrong is I do have this, I guess, like, growing up, like, you always get taught that African nations are very poor and, like, no one ever really goes to visit, so it was very interesting to see how it was, like, a tourist location, and a lot of Western nations had to go in there to save their citizens. But yeah, it was really interesting, and it was a really great movie.